Many of you are considering changing your life and therefore changing your destiny in many ways. And I wrote a book about mine, and I called it A Cottage and 3 Acres. And I want to share a little bit of that book with you, just the first chapter. And if you want to see what my cottage and 3 acres looked like on that very first day, there's some photographs at the end of this video. Mayflies rising. The mayflies rise early in the month if the weather is anyway normal. Sometimes if spring comes in too soon and summer follows on, the earth begins to shrink in the heat and even the midges stay in the shade. It's too hot to work on the bog without shade of tree or hill, and the cattle lie apart, heaving the heat at midday. May in Ireland can be hot and dry. That May, Bealtaine as it's known in Old Irish, the first one, was the dry beginning to a long, hot summer. I had spent several weeks each year in the west of Ireland looking at old cottages with land, ones that were affordable, but not one met all the criteria I'd set in my head. This trip was different, for I was desperate to leave London and change my life. It was a case of any reasonable dwelling with a few acres of land. This time it was going to be less of a search for perfection and more applying my vivid imagination to the most hopeless-looking ruin. In the event, I settled for the last property on the list, featuring all the wrong aspects, including north-facing, wet, rush-infested land. Here stood Bealtaine Cottage, and in my mind's eye, it was my dream home and small holding. The auctioneer, that's Irish for estate agent, owned a pub in the town. It was a case of going to the bar and asking this rather old man if he had any properties for sale. It was then just a slip of the tongue to order an Irish whiskey and soda. Somewhere in all of this confusion, a conversation developed that resulted in a short biography of sorts being delivered to the pub landlord, eloquently finished off with a heartfelt plea for an old cottage that had a little land around it. By the following evening, I was relaxing, back in the lounge bar of the same pub, toasting my new home, Bealtaine Cottage. The deal was done and dusted, even using the same solicitor as the vendor for speed of purchase. What matter the hole in the roof? No plumbing, ancient wiring, and a rocky mud track that served as a laneway. Or for that matter, the boggy land that had no drainage, trees or outbuildings. No matter anything. I paid the asking price and headed back to London to hand in my resignation and pack up all my worldly goods. It was raining on the day I left London. Ireland sweltered in a heat wave, according to BBC Radio 4. Money being at a premium, I hired a big Luton van on a 4-day lease. This was early July, and the intention was to collect everything that could be transported, load the van in a day, and make it to the overnight crossing from Holyhead to Dublin. I drove the van all over North London, collecting my chattels here and there from the homes of friends and family who'd agreed to store them after I sold my house. My optimism diluted the madness of the day. The ferry sailed at 3 o'clock in the morning, docking in Dublin by breakfast time and before the city stirred. The drive from Dublin would take about 3 hours. All went according to plan. It never occurred to me that unloading the van would be a one-woman show. This would be a good template for how the next 13 years would be. I had friends and family to help me load up in London, but arriving at Bealtaine Cottage, it suddenly dawned upon me that I had decided to buy a home and settle in a place where I had no family or friends and knew absolutely no one. It was a long hot day as I unloaded my worldly goods into a ramshackle cottage, pushing and shoving as much as I could fit into one of the two small bedrooms, where all would be safe and out of the way as I renovated the cottage. Well, that was the plan. Plants and pots were the first to be removed from the van and the last to be sorted out. Most of the pots held saplings and shrubs grown from seed or cuttings on my allotment in London. The tiny trees were strong and healthy, so I found a sheltered sunny spot by the south side of the cottage walls. I packed moss around the pots and watered well. Arranging all I had into some sort of order was important, as I would be back and forth to London over the next few months, couch surfing as I continued to work and gather money for all that needed to be done in the cottage before winter arrived. October, my birthday month. Mid-term break at school allowed me the opportunity to get back to Ireland for a short time and my beloved Bealtaine Cottage. The stone walls held my dreams, calling out to me to breathe life into their sad and empty shell. The very act of living leaves immeasurable energy behind, energy that can be felt quite tangibly in some old dwellings. Over the course of the summer, a local contractor had been engaged to make a gravel road into the property and excavate much of the earth that had been previously washed down from the hill of Ballyfermoyle. Behind the cottage onto the lands surrounding the dwelling. This continual soil erosion can be measured in the odd way in which stone walls erected on hillsides appear to have an inordinate amount of earth banked up on the upslope side, making it look more like terracing when it was not constructed as such. The area all around the structure was dug out quite deep, then filled with ton after ton of local limestone gravel. This proved to be an excellent investment as the climate was beginning to change and rainfall was about to become heavier and more aggressive, impacting badly on the soil, causing erosion everywhere. The gravel would later prove to be a wonderful area in which valerian, a lime-loving flowering plant, would flourish in successive years. The gravel robe is completed, and I finally had access to my home. It was imperative that I start the work on restoration and renovation. I had 10 days to find a reliable person whom I could trust to work for me. First on the to-do list was the roof. A gaping hole opened the soon-to-be kitchen onto the star-filled heavens on a good night. Most of the time it was rainwater that seeped and sometimes splattered onto the cottage floor from the heavens above. There were no ceilings to speak of, merely reinforced cardboard that looked substantial but gave way to the force of a broom being tapped on any part of it. This emergency repair was to be followed by rewiring, plumbing, for there was no kitchen sink, and the purchase and fitting of a Stanley stove. The stove would heat the water and the soon-to-be installed radiators. Once this work was allocated to a local handyman with contacts, very important to have contacts as I soon found out, work started on the cottage and I began walking the land. The land, some of the saddest looking land I'd ever walked upon. The ground squelched beneath my feet, brown, boggy water oozing up on either side of my wellies. Parts of the acreage were so boggy it was dangerous to stand still for more than a few seconds. It quickly became apparent that a lot of drainage was going to have to be carried out. Many people have asked me if I drew up a plan for planting the 3 acres. I had not. Walking the land and engaging with the contours, boggy bits, rocks and brambles was an essential part of any permaculture journey. I created mind maps to allow easy visualization and ultimate planning. There followed an event of perfect synchronicity, one in which I was introduced to a man with a digger, but no ordinary man with a digger. No, a man who listened to what I wanted and worked alongside of me, despite the apparent craziness of the plan I outlined to him. Synchronicity happens as a moment of meaningful coincidence, and this meeting was to shape the entire future of Bealtaine. The land needed more than just drainage. It cried out for understanding and empathy, both of which John had in abundance. So that, my dear listeners, is the end of the first chapter of my book, A Cottage and 3 Acres. And I think it's very fitting to have read that on this, the month of the 20th anniversary of the beginning of my journey here at Bealtaine Cottage. It's been an absolutely life-changing, soul-enhancing journey. It's been enormous hard work. It's been mixed with anxiety sometimes over whether I would even gather the money around me to pay the mortgage I had to get. It's 20 years that seem to have passed almost in the blink of an eye. What an amazing time. Another 20 years to come, I hope. And the journey, the personal journey, has taken me not just back to the land and back to a wonderful relationship with Mother Earth, but has set me on a path of wanting to explore the inner workings of all that I see and all that I hear, and the awakening to the knowledge that there is such a huge metaphysical presence through all of this that reassures me of this beautiful journey with Mother Earth, that it is a journey and there's so much more to come. Now, today I wanted to actually make this video more about another one of my interests, which is reincarnation, but I've decided to keep going with the celebration of Bealtaine Cottage, because I feel that the month, which is fast coming up to the end of the 3rd week of May of Bealtaine, leaves me only a short time to share with you this beautiful anniversary. And as I walk through the woodland, the trees I've planted, the way the magic has turned this into a temperate rainforest in less than 20 years, it's no wonder that I'm seeing more and more of the metaphysical. And all the elements and the elementals, all which is that incredible energy, which was never just about 3 small fields. It was about what lay beneath those 3 small fields, what was being nurtured and kept and lovingly held within by Mother Earth, ready for a resurrection, ready for a rebirthing, ready for me, I like to think, because I do believe that this was part of my own destiny and something that I personally had to fulfill as part of my sacred journey, not on Mother Earth, but now, as I know, with Mother Earth. So blessings to you all. And you'll see Built in a Cottage as it was in the beginning. It's just coming up.